Okay, I'm gonna try and do this again because, I just did a 20 plus min rant, and I came to realize that basically I need to break this up into a few videos because I was only scratching the surface. So we're gonna go ahead and do that and go into all of this. But basically, I've been having a back and forth with, I would call them a libtard or a progressitard. They claim they're not. But in the course of the back and forth, because I disagree with them, because they worship at the altar of Robert Wright. They want him to run for president. I say every skeleton he has in the closet, including how he destroyed the economy, will come out if he's ever stupid enough to do this. And what's really funny about that was they're like, oh, well, we hate the Clintons. And why do you worship Robert Wright? He's part of the Clintons. I mean, he's not related to them, but I mean, that doesn't make any dang sense. You don't know your history. But basically, there were a couple of concepts in there. One, we started, and the reason I would call them a libtard or a progressitard was because basically their arguments kept centering around Trump, manga. Because I don't share their world point of view, I'm apparently a fascist. I think they called me a racist, misogynistic. Honestly, the fallacy is sad at this point. And the whole thing was just a giant false dilemma, but then they started calling false dilemma. Basically they were assuming that because I don't worship Robert Wright like they do, clearly I'm a right-wing wacko. Which is really funny because the reality is I think both extremes are batshit crazy right now, but hey, whatever. But in the back and forth, they threw all the usual libtard talking point soup in, but again, they supposedly have a mind of their own, and they're not a libtard. They just call everybody who disagrees with them a fascist. But hey, whatever. I thought that was what the liberals did. But they swear they're not. They got me thinking on some points, and it really is what part of the divide is over this nation. Obviously, one of the points they brought up in general was poverty. The way they brought it up was the whole stagnant wages thing, which is both true and false, and I pointed that out in the back and forth, but I figured add it to a video here so it is more up. But there's 3 points that center around this. One, honestly, the whole stagnant wages, the more I look at it and the more my life experience goes forward, I've come to realize that stagnant wages in the United States is the embodiment of that philosophy that governments are good at one thing. They break your legs and then they give you crutches and then claim that without them you could not walk. Me personally, my personal politics is, how about you just don't break my legs in the first place? And you're seeing this push really come into fruition in the USA because your more liberal, progressive USA is doing things like going, hi, well, the first few years people are driving, they have too many accidents, so we just need to raise the age people get their driver's license, and then it'll all magically work. Well, if they don't know their history, they don't realize that back in my parents' generation, they did that. They looked at all the data and said, hi, the first few years of driving, those kids suck at driving, so let's raise the driving age 2 years. And now there's a push in a lot of places to do that. And they've been doing the same thing with the legal age to basically work over the years too. So basically through these 2 policies of, hi, when people start at something, they suck. So what we're going to do is manipulate the data and basically cut the first runs off the ladder and say, okay, now you guys start here. And for a time, it looks like that's working, only now people are starting later. And I hadn't really put those dots together until I was going through those things, but in making basically being analytical and making the argument, I came to realize, point blank, one of the reasons that wages are kind of flat, aside from the fact that we're giving out all these things and subsidizing wages being artificially low, is that people are being deferred in when they can actually start their career. My parents started working before I could. I first started trying to find a job at 11 and 12 because by the time my parents were 11 and 12, they'd already had one. During this process, it was this push from my family that I needed to go get a job, and I was pounding the pavement. I was doing everything I could to get one, and it just wasn't happening. We're sitting in a fast food place, and honestly, I became very liberal and progressive. Like, you don't understand. Nobody's going to hire me. None of this shit. So, basically, out of adolescent frustration, like, job applications, I literally stood up from the table, went over, grabbed the job application off the wall, because they had a now hiring sign at this fast food place, took the pen from my parents, filled the thing out, went up to the counter. Hi, which job? Which job do I put on here? Which one are you hiring for? And then they asked me how old I was. And then they informed us that it was now law in these here United States that I had to be 14 before I was legally allowed to obtain employment. In other words, I was literally too young to be allowed to have a job. I was insulted. My parents were angry. And now that I am on the other side of that, I'm on the parental side of that, and I'm seeing opportunities that were lawful for me to take advantage of a kid, that the United States has since become more liberal and progressed away from, that are now forbidden by law to my children. I'm really beginning to understand the vicious cycle of things. The other thing is I've actually taken a more traditional 9 to 5 to make refinancing the house easier. So every day I'm sitting in the whole living wage and rather poverty is choice luck cycle of things. And according to libtard progressive America, it's all luck, it's all chance, it's all blah, 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 and nobody can live on less than, I think it's $15 an hour. Which I find insulting because, one, I live on less than $15 an hour, but two, I got a perfect example. Every day, I pack my lunch when I go down there to basically work a 9-hour shift and get paid for 8 hours of it. Okay? And that cost me about $1. So that's, and the alternative way I can meet that need to eat is there's little kiosks all over the damn office building where I could easily spend, and many of my co-workers who are earning the exact same thing I am do, $20 a day. So let's see, there's 252 working days in a year times $19. Oh, look, $4,788. So literally, that is one choice right there. One choice to put in the extra effort to pack and take a lunch that is putting almost $5,000 a year in my pocket rather than having it evaporate before I ever get it. And according to libtards, this is all luck. There's no choice to this whatsoever. And, people are just born with silver spoons and they need to pay their fair share. I'm like, that's $5,000 from one choice. If we start adding up all the choices that a person makes in a year, just how much and how far apart can they be in 5 years? And that's my base economics, and that's my base thing. It's not that I don't care about people that are less well off than me. It's that I have a very hard time having sympathy for people who won't make those choices and then get the bad consequences. Look, if I've got abundance, I'll help anybody. But I kind of get offended at the extreme version of libtard progressivism that goes, hi, because you saved $5,000 a year, not eating out, packing your lunch, and making do without, and invested that or saved that and now have $10,000, give us $2,000 so we can give those people money. The people who wouldn't make that sacrifice and do without. Why? I'm very confused. Shouldn't we be giving them the education on how to save it themselves? You know, that's what I want. I realize that most people weren't raised that way. That really sank in when I got married. It's like, y'all didn't buy in bulk, and you didn't plan your meals out, and you didn't talk about money, and you didn't do stuff. I mean, that's the way I was raised, and it serves me well. Reality is, I can be very frugal, and I can live on almost nothing. I think that's an invaluable skill. Quite frankly, I think it's one of the pillars of wealth. I think every school kid in America should be taught that. I don't think it should be given a bailout. I think they should be taught how not to need one. Apparently that makes me heartless and not give a shit about people, according to libtard America. So, you know, that's point one. Others will be in, I guess, other parts videos so I can keep them closer to, you know, 5 to 15 minutes.